We've now made it to the Math 7, Unit 6 Study Guide. And you'll see up at the top of the page you have a number of vocabulary terms. The three most important being probability, theoretical probability, and experimental probability. Probability being the likelihood of an event to occur. Theoretical probability being the expected outcome over the sample space. And remember, that's calculating what should take place in theory using just the math. Experimental probability is the expected outcome over the quantity of trials. And that's calculating probability based on doing actual trials. Those definitions should help you to be able to answer question 1. D and E are independent event and dependent events. An independent event is an event in which your sample space does not change. A dependent event is an event in which your sample space does change. And we will be doing multiple examples of each within the study guide. So let's start now into question number 3. Question 3 says find the probability of blue, then red, with replacement. So with replacement tells me that I will be putting the marble back into the bag. My sample space will not be changing, so that is independent probability. So the probability of blue, we have 6 blue marbles and 20 total marbles. Then tells me I will be multiplying. I have 2 red marbles and still 20 marbles because we are doing this with replacement, which means I put the marble back in, my sample space does not change. Equals 12 over 400. Both of which are divisible by 4. So that will equal 3 over 100. And 3 divided by 100, since we report all of our answers in decimal form, would be 0.03. And we also report all of our answers in percent form, would be 3%. So let's move on to B. Find the probability of blue, then red, without replacement. Without replacement tells me I will not be putting the marble back into the bag, so my sample space will be changing. That would be dependent probability. So the probability of blue is still 6 out of 20. But since I'm not putting that marble back in the bag, my probability of red would be something out of 19. But we should still have 2 out of 19 in the bag. So that would give us 12 over 380. Which would simplify to 3 over 95. And we're going to report that in decimal format, which will give me 0.03157, so that'll round up to 16, which is going to equal 3.16%. And so we can see there is a slight change in the probability depending upon whether or not we have replacement or we do not have replacement. Number 4, compare the two probabilities. Find the probability of getting a white and then a green, and compare it with finding the probability of getting a green and then a white? Well, we're going to start with A, with replacement. With replacement would tell me we're dealing with independent probability, so my sample space will not change. A white, we have 3 white marbles, so 3 over 20. And if you see a comma between the two terms, that still means that we're dealing with and then. So we're going to be multiplying. And we're dealing with independent probability, so my sample space is staying the same. And then the quantity of green marbles was 5. So that's going to equal 15 over 400. Which will simplify to 3 over 80. 3 divided by 80 will equal 0.0375, which equals 3.75%. Now we're going to compare this with B. Find the probability of green and white with replacement. Again, with replacement tells me we're dealing with independent probability. So the probability of getting getting green, there were 5 marbles that were green over 20 times 3 marbles that were white over 20, which is going to equal 15 over 400, which should look familiar. That will simplify to 3 over 80. 3 over 80 equals 0.0375, which would equal 3.75%. And so we can see that with independent probability, the order of the two events will not affect the percent of the probability.